in terms of, firstly, the entrepreneur piece, is there anything on top of your head that you really want to achieve with that piece? Like in terms of, do you really want to focus on inspiration? Do you want to focus on really your all around story, mentorship, motivation, spreading knowledge? Kind of what was your hopes with kind of taking that piece and running with it in that way?
Yeah, I think it is around inspiration and what's possible. And I think also raising some awareness of the, I think you're the sum of your experiences, right? I mean, that's what creates who you are as a person. And it's exciting to be at a moment where you can pull together everything that you've done in your lifetime to coalesce to actually do something productive and meaningful now. But I've done a lot, and I've had the incredible privilege of having a front row seat on a lot of things, and so I think being able to share that story, and then also talk about why now, is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So in terms of the Thrive Global, kind of that avenue, again, thinking kind of like culture, health amongst, the entire brand and kind of the entire team. What were you kind of wanting to do with that in terms of approaching it? And, with that being said, you can maybe expand more on kind of your guys' approach to that side of things.
Yeah.
That'll kind of help us.
Yeah, I think for the entrepreneur story, it's more about how everything that I've done in tech can help now be put to use to change the world and save the world. I think for the Thrive audience, it's more about the combination of being tech and also being human, and having been through a lot of twists and turns in my life, and now as a mother, that I feel more grounded and working on things that can have tangible impact in the community, as opposed to just a technology that was an idea in my head, that you think you can just fix something, and everybody thinks that there's a lot of technologies looking for a marketplace. And I think my very first company, we had this massive idea of something we wanted to do, and it wasn't necessarily what the marketplace was ready for. So it's interesting to now be in a different place in my life of actually being in the mix. I mean, even with COVID, I still have more of a community in my life, and it's coming from an understanding of actual pain points of people that are living their lives, and thinking about how do you take technology to actually piece together solutions from that understanding. So it's been an evolution of my journey that's a bit more real now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. That's perfect. So kind of bouncing off of that, and the way I like to frame this is, say this piece is out there, right? It's on the computer. Who do you want to be opposite of that screen? Who's kind of your ideal person who's looking at this story? Is it, another founder, another employee of a similar industry, or kind of what exactly is that archetype that you want to kind of reach out to?
Well, as an entrepreneur, when you think about what does it take to be successful and scale, you basically, you have to build a movement, and you've got to get a lot of people on your side. And I think earlier in my life, I didn't understand the story element of it and how important it is for people to understand and experience what you're trying to do. And so the message is to a very broad audience, because it's for potential advisors, partners, customers, potential hires, investors. It's everyone in the ecosystem that would be able to come together and help make this happen. And as consumers, we're all people that can benefit from the work that I'm doing. So there are very few people that it shouldn't speak to. In fact, if it doesn't speak to someone, I've done something wrong in my messaging.
Yeah. So really, anyone and everyone who winds up on one of these stories should see a point of connection to your story.
Yeah, and you see a common thread that pulls everyone together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a lot of that in that other piece, and kind of how so many aspects of your story can really apply to anything and anyone who is in a certain situation. So
I love solving really hard problems. When somebody says it's impossible, I get very excited. That's when they put me in.
Yeah, absolutely. And
For better or for worse.
yeah. And, that's really, that's who you want to be taking care of that. Someone who doesn't see obstacles, but sees opportunity
Yeah.
instead. So, I, can relate to that more. So with that being covered, in terms of kind of the narrative of the story and kind of how we're looking at it from a structural point of view, what do you kind of see being the main points of, say, let's start with the entrepreneur piece. Say you're looking at it like a B, C story. What do you want to see in that A story, B story, C story? What do you really want covered? And then of course our job is to take that and, run more with it, but just kind of from your head, any main points that you really want to see covered.
Yeah, I think there's a few parts. One is that I feel this tremendous call to action. What's so is that over the last 18 months, people have generally taken a pause on their healthcare, if it wasn't something that was absolutely urgent, right? And so one of the great questions we had as clinicians is, what was that going to do? And would there be some long-term consequences? And might there be a hidden pandemic of cancer and behavioral health challenges? And as I started to talk to people in the community, I didn't have to go very far to see it. So I'm talking about very close people in my family and friends diagnosed with very late stage cancer because they missed health screenings. And it started to recognize that if we can't figure out a way to get people to engage more successfully in their healthcare, we're going to have some problems up ahead. And so that's the first point, is just that there is a moment now where if we do not take action, there are some very significant challenges up ahead. I mean, people, you think about, we talked to a substance use disorder clinic, people stop going and stop because they stop treatment. So you worry about people being able to make it through the holidays. I mean, these are real live issues. So that's the first piece, is the moment and the need is now. We need to get people to engage more successfully with their healthcare. The second part about this is that you are a sum of your experiences. And so I would love to paint the picture of the path that I've been on now for quite some time, of what is work, what hasn't worked, but what does it take to really understand how to take on a problem like this? Because you almost have to have walked around it from every side. And the difference of where I am now on my journey from when I was a first-time entrepreneur is I've had the privilege of actually getting to see all the different sides. Like I've been an investor, I've sat in on with big companies and advised them on their health and technology strategies. And I've advised countries and academic institutions. And so you start to get a sense of all the different, in terms of being able to reduce something to practice and make it real, you have to have actually gone out and broken things and not necessarily gotten every single thing right. So at least I have some sense of where the landmines are now, even though I'm taking on another really big, complicated problem.
Yeah.
And then the third part, I think, is probably more of the thrive angle of I've become more human now too. I mean, I think when I first started, I literally used to sleep in my office at times, and my team would come in the morning and they were trying. It was a very different thing, and now I'm actually very focused on making sure that my team works really hard, but they pace themselves because it's a marathon and not a sprint. And actually, to get the most out of people, you actually have to inspire them to be the best version of themselves. It's a different angle. I know some CEOs and entrepreneurs, they just kind of run everyone and burn everyone out. And that's different approach. But as someone who trained as a medical doctor, I find that it's an interesting angle to be approaching running a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's synchronicity too. I mean, everything is kind of mirroring the core of how you kind of approach things and kind of how you perceive things. So, like you said, with how you approach your business is also how you approach your team and the culture that you kind of run within them, and make sure that, they are being the best version of themselves and they're happy with what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a very much more modern approach and much more kind of, evolved with kind of where things are going.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean we don't work hard. I mean, we work
Right.
really hard, but
Uh-huh.
people are out on walks, they're, whatever it
Yeah.
takes. So
Yeah.
eating their acai bowls because we're here in California, at least part of the
Oh,
team
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
At least I don't drink, I don't do kale juice though.
Oh, really?
No.
So you're based in California?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Although my team is on 3, well, actually 4 time zones if you count our developers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had my run-ins with, time zones all over the place, and that's never the funnest thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. And I think one of the cool things you mentioned is kind of your very unique perception that you have, being someone who's like actually gone in and seen with your own eyes and actually done these things firsthand, and you can actually have a real world perception on it and kind of bring that to your approach with your business. I think there's a lot of speculation that goes on within the community and across different industries, where people just kind of go off of what they've researched or what they've kind of looked at, but actually doing it and seeing it is a very, very different thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting
Yeah.
kind of thing we can tie in there, and I think it's very, very unique.
I have done a lot of work mentoring other entrepreneurs in my time, and what I find so important is to have a personal motivation, because if you have a personal call to action, it gets you through a lot of the pain and challenges of entrepreneurship, which is sometimes can be a very thankless battle. You could have 12 Zoom calls where everybody tells you your idea that it's not going to work, right? And so it's having that inside you, knowing that there's a need now and there's a potential for impact, and we're going to find a way and we're going to figure it out, that gets you up in the morning. And that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. And also, to kind of expand on your first point, I just want to kind of get more of an idea of kind of where you see you and your approach and your brand being that bridge between what you look at as the hidden pandemic and all these different underlying causes and health conditions that are just kind of remaining in the shadows. Where do you see you guys kind of being that bridge and opting for more advancement and more enlightenment to kind of take those things out of the shadows and get more people kind of focused on their primary health and kind of really just remaining happy and healthy at the end of the day?
It's a societal question, really, because the technology to be able to predict and understand health has been around for a while. I mean, I developed diagnostic tests 15 years ago, or I guess, has it really been 15 years? I've lost track. It's been a while. Where we could look at viruses, we could look at the different strains or variants, we could look at mutations in resistance to treatment, we could look at the distinctions between viruses and bacteria. We could even look and see whether you had other chronic illness that might impact your progression of your disease. But people weren't ready for that. They didn't want all that information. That was more than, people just wanted to know, do you have flu or not? And that's it.
Right.
They didn't even want to know whether you could treat it with Tamiflu. And have we finally reached a moment where we want to know? Because we need to. And so are we ready for a shift into proactive medicine and not reactive medicine? If we want to get through this pandemic and prevent the next pandemic, I mean, there's a lot of things that people are asking questions about, right? How do we get through this pandemic? How do we prevent the next pandemic? I'm worried about the other pandemics people don't talk about, like a cancer pandemic, right? Or maybe a diabetes pandemic, or behavioral health one. We have to be willing to embrace not just technology, but also information management and data in a different way. And it's funny because in some ways the cat's out of the bag, right? Like your data, I can right now, I can cross-reference a bunch of things and I can tell you a lot about yourself just from third-party data sets, right? But if you show up, unfortunately, if you show up, someone in your family shows up in an emergency department, they may not know you at all. And that's really a challenge right now in 2021 that we still have that. I think is remarkable. So, the ad tech world is clearly a bit ahead of the healthcare space, but we've reached a moment where we've got to start building some of those bridges, and we are, and it is happening. But it's wild when you think about it.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And I think what stuck out to me in that article too, but when you talk about being proactive instead of reactive, I think kind of reactionary is very aligned to like short-term thinking, and
Yes.
there's a lot of that being amplified. A lot of people kind of
Yes.
tuning into headline by headline,
Uh-huh.
or
Tweet
really
by
focusing.
tweet. Yeah.
Right. Social media is massive in terms of being a
Literally,
part of
are
that
you
as well.
trending?
Uh-huh. Yeah, 100%. And I think proactiveness has been vastly overshadowed by that. And I think, like you said, it's really a societal question when it comes down to it. But voices like yours can really push for more advocacy down that road.
Yeah.
So I think I couldn't agree more with how you look at that and kind of how you perceive that, because I think it's crucial, not just in terms of health, both physical and mental, but just for the industry in general,
Yeah.
and innovation that's going across there as well. So yeah, I think that's massive question that needs to be asked. And obviously, I think what you guys are doing is a massive step in the right direction. So that's definitely something that sticks out to me, and I think will stick out to readers for sure within these stories.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really wanted to focus on that. But in terms of, and I just like to ask this to kind of see what your point of view is and kind of how you look at this. But what in your eyes would make this article appeal to others? And again, thinking of the entrepreneur piece and the Thrive Global piece, what do you think would really kind of, and I know we talked about how there should be points throughout that can be, kind of threaded to a specific kind of point of connection. But what would you see as like a few points that really should appeal to anyone that's reading the story?
I think some of the things that I was just talking about are so key, because we actually have to make a choice right now about like data rights and data privacy and what types of technologies we're actually comfortable deploying. I mean, do we, and there are a lot of different layers to this, because how does it affect me as a person? How does it affect my family? Think about COVID, right? All of a sudden we recognize that illness is not an individual challenge, right? Illness affects your family, it affects your community, it affects every single person that you interact with. And I think we're waking up to that now and recognizing that when you think about population health, that's the issue, is that it's not just affecting you, it's infecting everyone in your entire life that you touch. And there are some challenges with that, because part of that community is your employer. So how do they handle that information versus how do you handle that information? And do they have a right to know? There are a lot of things that have to get sorted out right now as we go into this next phase. Getting proactive has tremendous opportunity and also responsibility.
Yeah. I like the way you said that. It's 100% a decision that requires a lot of discipline as well. So yeah, I think that moving forward, and that's that can apply to anything. Anyone that could possibly be reading that, who is a human being, can relate to that. So I just wanted to pull out a few kind of snippets
Mhm.
from this piece that you did on the chief of staff,
Mm.
that really stuck out to me, and just kind of get more thoughts from you on these specific points, and kind of see if we can kind of dial more in,
Sure.
on a few of these. So firstly was this little snippet here, and it says, ultimately, this is where Alice and her company are focusing their efforts. How can you leverage data and technology to establish a trusted relationship between consumers, and businesses to drive effective engagement? So just really kind of more expansion on this. I thought this was very interesting, quote and approach.
Mm.
So yeah, just really anything you got more on that.
Yeah, I having had this challenge in my community of people where I noticed that they weren't taking action on their healthcare. We were talking to folks. In fact, I was talking to a number of primary care doctors, and we were talking about how back in the day, 50 years ago, you'd have a doctor who would actually know you and would know, whether you smoked or whether you ran around the track or whether you were home alone a lot or whether you picked up your prescriptions. And now we're all so isolated and disconnected. And so I actually spent some time with the head of family medicine at Tufts, and he was saying, well, because he is that doctor, he actually cares so much about his community and actually put himself at risk during COVID and has done incredible things. But he said, I tried to do an outreach where I sent 10,000 emails to my population and only a few people responded. And I wasn't able to reach them. And I thought about what a shame that is, because he sort of knocked on, everybody's talking about the digital front door of healthcare right now. So what, he sent the emails, he knocked on your digital front door, no response. As we talk to people, though, we learn that the problem is that in the last year and a half, so much about how we engage has changed. There's been, people talk about digital transformation, right? And what I've experienced, I don't know about you, is digital fragmentation. Just the number of apps and the number of notifications. One day, I think I had over 600 notifications in a day of different, WhatsApp and Signal and text and email. And it's very hard to get past the noise. And it also feels very impersonal, a lot of the outreach. And so what if you could deliver information to consumers, to patients, in a way that was personal to them, on a channel of their choosing, at a time that they were most likely to receive it, in language that they could relate to? Would they be more likely to take action? And that is something that we're very focused on. So we've actually built a platform that does just that. It can actually predict, using AI, where and how someone is most likely to be engaging. And we are going to deploy that with some incredible hospitals that we're working with, to help them with group visits and cancer screenings and all the things that I was talking about before that are this tremendous need right now, to see if we can have an impact. And it's exciting to go from an idea to spinning up a software in the last several months to actually going to test out our MVP and get it out into the open ocean. We've actually tested it with one pilot. Now we've got a couple more coming up. So it'll be great to see how things go this fall.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's super exciting. And that would be monumental. I mean, the way you explain that, kind of that what if, and if this is something that can be pushed across and amplified, I think that would be absolutely monumental. And yeah, I think that's truly something that can really deeply make an impact. So I just wanted to kind of get more thoughts on that from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll pull up, I have the rest of these on my phone, so excuse me.
Sure.
Try to find this real fast. So this one's a little bit more kind of towards your personal journey. and kind of how you kind of look at your entrepreneurial journey and kind of how you approach that side.
Mm.
But I'm gonna go down here. So right here it says, Sherry and Alice do not perceive that they have an uphill battle to succeed in the business world because they are women. Instead, they have wholly rid their minds of that notion because they do not want to create mental obstacles to their success. Alice has a sign above her desk that simply reads, "Be it," to remind her that the only obstacle to achieving success is oneself. And this one really kind of hit me because I think it's a very kind of way of approaching things that is the correct way of doing it, and kind of putting yourself in front of everything and kind of making your personal mindset kind of how you approach, whether it be business, task or personal task, but making sure that you're not blaming anything else or anyone else except yourself in every single endeavor. I think that's a way of approaching things that really calls for more success and more innovation amongst what you're trying to do and kind of how you're trying to impact others and kind of go about your business. So I just wanted to get more thoughts from you on that approach, because I really did see some congruency there, and I really liked the way that was said. So yeah, anything that you have more on that, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think, look, I've been someone who I had the opportunity to have an amazing education and tremendous experience in my life, and I'm very grateful for everything that's been given to me. But they say, for those who are much is given, much is expected. So I'm very hard on myself to really want to always try to, solve hard problems and never give up, and no matter how difficult it is. And it's interesting because we can define ourselves in a lot of different ways. And I mean, yes, I am a woman, but I think of myself first. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a medical doctor. I'm all these things. And how do you allow yourself to just be yourself? Because trying to be something other than who you are is only going to create challenge for yourself and added friction. So I think my whole life has been an evolution on being more me, and being the best version of me, and not trying to be anything else. And I remember the first time I had just started my company. I was 25, and we were actually looking potentially to acquire this other technology. And I went into the room, and I don't think that they knew that I was the CEO, which was interesting. And I sort of just took it all in, and I realized they were waiting for the meeting to start.
Oh, wow.
But and then I realized that I could just be it, and I could just be the person that they needed to be me to be, and just own what I was there to do. I was there because there was a piece of technology that we wanted to have in our arsenal, and that was my objective for the day. And I just let everything else fade out, and I just focused on that. And by the end of the day, we actually got what we wanted out of the conversation, and it was very productive. But it was fascinating because there have been a lot of moments like that, and you got to just be it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's funny. You brought that up, but I think, that's really the only way of looking at it if you want to truly change the world at the end of the day, because everyone can put their projections on you, everyone can put these identities on you, but really at the end of the day, what truly matters is the task at hand, who you are as a human being, and
Yes.
how you create this avenue to achieving that task and moving on to the next one. I
In
think
fact,
that's
I was
really,
told at the end of it that I was actually incredibly intimidating, which I thought was
really,
very amusing to me, because
that is funny.
I was just channeling, like, I'm just going to be it.
Yeah. So they said that after you made that decision to,
Yes, apparently.
that's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, really, they kind of should be if someone's that, makes that kind of flips that switch and just becomes this, insanely disciplined machine that is just, task driven and kind of tunnel vision on achieving what needs to be achieved. That's kind of how others will probably react to that, and that's just, kind of how things go. But in the end, you're getting done what needs to be done, and I think that's a super unique approach that I actually don't see often. And I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs, and that really stuck out to me in terms of how look at that. And I think that's a very success-driven mindset, and I really do
I'm
agree with it.
focused
And I
more and
like it.
more now, Landon, on just being more self-expressed with each year of my life, because
Mhm.
it's not a dress rehearsal. And so problems need to be solved, and you just got to be ready and show up and bring what you can bring. And
Mhm.
that has to come from a place of power and freedom and self-expression. And you can't let anything hold you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Um, yeah, so I had one more kind of open-ended quote that I found from here
Mm.
that I thought was super interesting and kind of very broad, but also a very cool kind of idea. Let me see if I can find this here. Sorry, I had all these highlighted and they just all got wiped out of nowhere. So,
Technology.
yep, and yeah, you know, it's what it does. Not much depending on it these days. Man, I wish that did not wipe that out. This is a lot more difficult to find it. Okay. So this starts out with, fortunately for Alice, during the interview process, there was one candidate who stood out as having the power to understand the why and how of my mission, excuse me, and ability to amplify it. And of course, that person was your guys' chief of staff, Sherry Kono. And I thought this was just kind of interesting in terms of how you approach finding someone who could possibly be that right hand person who can align with how you obviously have these very unique approaches and very unique way of going about business and to your personal brand as well. So I just thought it was super interesting in how you looked for another human being who could align with these things and could also fulfill such kind of high magnitude things in terms of healthcare data technology. I mean, really, obviously what you guys are trying to do is super big, for lack of a better word. So it's very interesting to me in terms of how you looked for this person and how you ultimately decided on Sherry, and kind of how that all ended up. And I think the thought process behind that could really be unique and very cool for us to kind of expand on. So yeah, just anything that you have on that, I would be super intrigued to learn more on that.
Yeah, I think when you think about building a team, everybody's got to be able to take something on and do something that allows you to expand and scale.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're never going to grow. And so to have people who have the capacity to think and help you see your blind spots and um, can further refine what North is really important. Um, you could look at a week two ways. You could look at a week and say, okay, I've got Monday through Friday. How many meetings can I stack into my week? Right? I'm just going to fill my week. And hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have done something productive because I've been really busy. Or you could look at your week and say, what do I need to accomplish this week? What needs to happen? When you think about possibilities, what actually needs to happen to be able to get somewhere productive and meaningful? And so what if you could shape your week to some extent? I mean, there's always going to be meetings you've got to take, but what if you could shape your week in a way that you were focused on your core objectives? It's a different way to look at planning and resourcing and all the elements that I think are really key in running a business. And so those are the kinds of people that I seek out, is really more in the solutioning than just administrative and stacking calendars, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I see what you mean through. Yeah, I think it's kind of a median between volume and kind of head down, getting tasks done, and managing both growing, scaling, and task at hand, in the present day. So yeah, I think that's again, like most things in terms of what you do, I think it's a very unique approach, and again, opts for more success and more results to be delivered in the end. So yeah, that's awesome. And I think we have, possibly one of the coolest kind of stories on deck that I could not be more excited to tell about you and about your brand. And yeah, I honestly can't wait to get kind of down to business and get some cool content over to you guys. So I don't know if Bonnie or anyone kind of translated this over to you, but kind of how we go about these next steps is very kind of team based. Like we'll come up with some first drafts, really something that we believe in, we can go off of, and then of course go back and forth with you and your team, making sure everything is aligned, is 100% unique to you and your brand, and making sure that every sentence is something you're proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course amplifying that through the traffic sources that we have aligned here. So yeah, that's pretty much how these next steps go. But before we go ahead and hop off here, I just want to open the floor to you. Anything else you want to add? Anything else that's still on your mind? Anything and everything, just feel free to kind of let that loose. And yeah, anything that's up in your head, feel free to let that go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the time, Landon. It's a moment in my life where I recognize that there's what you can do and with tech and problems you can solve with innovation, and there's there's communication that you can have with your community. But it's also time to expand beyond the nodes I'm already connected to bring in new nodes and build a larger following, because the things that we're trying to do are big and bold, and you've got to get everyone on your side, and it's not optional. So it's interesting because I've spent the last several years really being an expert to experts. So which has been great to some extent. I mean, I've been able to have a front row seat and actually see the industry from the inside out, inside retail and inside big tech, inside major healthcare providers. I've literally been everywhere and seen it, and so it's fascinating to think about how do you solve problems, understanding how all these elements operate within one another. And so yeah, it's time to tell a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, Bonnie told me a little bit kind of how, you've been, and obviously what we talked about, you kind of been head down, taking care of business, taking care of the brand and kind of tasks at hand. And of course, speaking to your own personal network. But in terms of growing that, and like you said, it's definitely where things are going. More and more people are opting for, more and more media exposure.
Yeah.
But I think a very important thing is in what you said before about, adding more nodes to connect to the overall system and your network. I think it's very important to add the correct and most genuine nodes, if that makes sense, and make sure that you're growing authentically, and not just putting thoughts out there just to be in Forbes or just to be in Fortune. I think it's very important that you're telling the right story and an aligned story that's very true to your brand and to you as a person.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's why we're here. That's really our most important and kind of our most necessary job is
Mhm.
to take care of that side of things, making sure that we really are being genuine to you guys and really telling that story in its most authentic form. So
Yes.
yeah, that's really our approach, excuse me, to go on top of yours. And yeah, like I said, I couldn't be more excited to take this to the writer's room and come up with some awesome stories that we can, tell to the world.
I look forward to that.
Awesome.
I know there's the stories I can tell now, and there's the stories I'll tell when my kids have kids or something. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, yeah, and that's, this was, I got more, I think, from this interview than I've gotten in a lot. I think we really do have some awesome things that we can expand on. And yeah, I can't wait to see what kind of we come up with as a
Mhm.
team. And yeah, I'd love to, if another, potential time comes up, I'd love to talk further.
Mhm.
I feel like I've only, scratched the surface with kind of how you have gone along this journey. I'd love to hear more about it if that ever comes up. But for now, we're going to get to work on these stories and really come up with some cool content and then get that published.
All
And
right. Sounds
yeah,
great, Landon. Yeah, no, happy to share.
awesome.
There's a lot.
Yeah, no, I
Life
appreciate it.
is the sum of your experiences, right? You just make the most of them.
Absolutely. And speaking of, I just kind of had this in my head this whole interview, but your home like looks straight out of a Hallmark fall movie. Like it's just perfectly designed. Like I feel like it's straight from a scene from like one of those
Well,
cheesy Hallmark movies.
hey, I really appreciate that. So when COVID first struck, we were working in an office, and
Mm,
I I had to host a meeting here on Zoom, and I had I had no space in this house where there wasn't a fire truck or a monster truck or something in the visual field. And I had to present to over 50 people. And I found this old table. Of course, one of my sons had actually unscrewed one of the legs. So it
oh
had three
gosh.
legs. And I found a
Uh,
piece of white wall, which actually turned out to be this wall. And I put the table down and I sat there and I had the table and I had my patch of white wall behind me, and I'm in the meeting, and everything's going great,
mhm.
and I'm handling it all. And then, of course, I'm home alone with two children, so my son
Right.
comes in wanting me, and it was one of those moments, right, where he comes in, and of course, I'm new to Zoom, so I shut down the video, but not the sound. So they heard me,
Oh gosh.
saying some words to him. Anyway, my
Oh
team
gosh.
decided they got tired. So, and then I actually had to bring the table downstairs because I had the two kids on the Zoom school and
Uh,
me with the table, and putting my table between the other two tables, at least it could sit straight. But finally, the team finally decided that they were tired of looking at the white wall. So
oh
this has
yeah.
been part of my self-expression, has been to create the space that I'm in this box. I manage a team in this box all
Yeah.
day long. And
Yeah.
so it's my experience, it's your experience, and you're coming into this is my home office. So this is my chance to share who I am, right? And so it's
Yeah.
been an act of self-expression. It's been a lot of fun. And like the
Yeah.
roses are from my garden.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, 10 out of 10 Zoom
Thank
background. Like
you.
I run into a lot of the green screens or like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I'm saying
like if you,
be it.
yeah, exactly. And that's getting me into the fall mood too. I'm like getting a little nostalgic even looking at it. It's
Well, and
couldn't have done
what's
it better.
funny is I have this outdoor space, but I so rarely go out there, which I require everyone to try to spend at least 1 hour a day outside. And I forget it sometimes myself because I get very focused.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I forget that I am in California and there is fresh
Right.
air.
Yeah. Yeah. Same issue here. I have to, remember to look up every once in a while and you know, snap out of it for a little bit.